Hi there. This video is on what happened to Tyrek Lannister. In the books, there are other minor Lannister cousins that weren't included in the TV show. Tytos Lannister in the books had 4 sons and 1 daughter, of whom Tywin was eldest. And third brother Tygett is gone now, but he had 1 son, 14-year-old Tyrek, who, like Lancel, was a squire to King Robert. If you haven't read the books, he's just another character like Lancel. And what he's notable for, don't put much attention on this, as a land grab, they made him, air quotes, marry Ermesinde Hayford, who is a baby. They didn't consummate, she's the last living member of House Hayford, and the family's in danger of dying out, so they wanted to secure their land claim over Castle Hayford. So that is treated as unusual in their culture. Apparently they must have gotten special permission from the High Septon to do this. It's a glorified betrothal, okay? And people joke about it. It's treated as a why not? They do that, they go, with Sansa and Joffrey at the beginning. They're a bit young to marry. Let's have them betrothed and they'll marry and consummate it later. Why did they make a marriage ceremony with a baby who can't even read the vows? I don't know. They didn't consummate it. It's a glorified betrothal. Don't fixate on that. If anyone talks about that in the comments, I'm going to delete them, so don't even bother. Talk about the mystery of what happened to Tyrek. Because Tyrek Lannister disappeared during the food riots that Joffrey sparked off in the 2nd book. He didn't get killed, he simply disappeared. And even 2 books later, characters wonder about this. There was the riot, and that was in the show, and they did tear the High Septon limb from limb in the show as well. That was fun. Now, Tyrek's a pretty good kid. I mean, even compared to Lancel, Tyrion likes him, but this is in the 4th book, A Feast for Crows. Jaime found himself wondering. Tyrek had served King Robert as a squire, side by side with Lancel. Knowledge could be more valuable than gold, more deadly than a dagger. It was Varys he thought of then, smiling and smelling of lavender. The eunuch had agents and informers all over the city. It would have been a simple matter for him to arrange to have Tyrek snatched during the confusion, provided he knew beforehand that the mob was like to riot. And Varys knew all, or so he would have us believe. Yet he gave Cersei no warning of that riot, nor did he ride down to the ships to see Myrcella off. And like in the paragraph after that, other Lannister generals point out, if someone wanted to kidnap him for ransom, we would have gotten a ransom demand by now. It's been over a year. And we haven't found a body, so what happened? I'm convinced it was actually Littlefinger. Nor is this an original idea. This is not my idea. It's fairly popular, and I thought of it for 1 or 2 specific reasons, and I thought more comprehensive and thought-out theory posts about it on Reddit and on message board forums about why it's probably Littlefinger. Now, I'm making this video in response to a video that the YouTuber Rorist just made on this last week. And I think she's referring to a specific Reddit theory that has recently gotten some circulation. Here's the link for it. That this wasn't her original idea either. That I think she saw it and went, wow, this is a cool theory. I am not trying to attack Rorist. I feel bad about some people might think that. I really like her channel. She puts out great analysis. I highly recommend it. She puts out videos on stuff that's just from the prequels, like character profiles from the Dance of the Dragons, which TV people would never get. So I really like the work she puts out on Game of Thrones and other Star Wars stuff. And I feel really bad pointing this. See, this is not me yelling. This is just, I feel bad, but I want to point this out to you. That is reasonable discourse. Because really, this is happening to everyone, including me. I worry that we're sitting around for over a year or years in terms of the books with no new content. I worry that we're just grasping at straws and just attracted to theories that are exciting or interesting or entertaining, but forgetting Occam's razor, that fundamentally the most plausible theory is probably the right one. That in all sorts of genres, I never get into making theories for the sake of making theories because they're entertaining theories. Even making the most outlandish one possible. I like theories that try to be what really happened. Trying to accurately guess it. That if you think, I think giant space bats did it, well, that's entertaining, but it probably isn't going to be what really happens. And yes, this is a fictional story. None of it is real, but the author, in a well-written story like Song of Ice and Fire, Martin is trying to make things happen which could plausibly and realistically happen. So we're trying to guess, what did Martin think would be the realistic answer? As opposed to, well, Martin will come up with something entertaining and outlandish. We know that's not his writing style. So recognizing that these, like, Littlefinger isn't real, Tyrek isn't real, but what could plausibly happen within this fictional construct, I'm trying to find what is most plausible. Even if that's pragmatic and a little ho-hum, it's just, I can't get with theories for the sake of theories. Now, in all humility and in total fairness to Rorist, I myself believe a couple of far-fetched theories simply because I like them. Usually the historical mystery ones, which we may never get a real answer for anyway. That's why I feel it's okay to theorize about them, like, what destroyed Hardhome? We might never get an answer for that, or are the deep ones real? Case in point, I'm convinced that both Rhaegar Targaryen and Jacaerys Velaryon left dragon eggs hidden in the crypts of Winterfell. I believe mushrooms account, people, because it could have happened that way. Stranger things have happened. I'm not making fun of Rorist, and really, from the way she reads down the list, I'm pretty sure, I googled and then found this, that she must have stumbled on this because it's gaining a lot of traction on Reddit these days, this theory that it was Varys and what happened to Tyrek. And watch her video, because it was confusing to me. That I'm not attacking her on this, it's just the theory she shared is that Tyrek wound up in Braavos and is one of the dead bodies Arya encounters in the House of Black and White, who committed suicide. Now, Arya is literally blind in this chapter, and it says she knelt and felt his face, tracing the line of his jaw, brushing her fingers across his cheeks and nose, touching his hair. Curly hair and thick, a handsome face, unlined, he was young. And as Rorist points out, but Tyrek has curly hair and is around 14 years old, so this must be a clue that it's Tyrek. And on top of that, the theory goes something like this, that Varys, there's a couple of variants on it, that Varys captured Tyrek and then handed him over to the Faceless Men to kill him and steal his face for use as a shapeshifter mask, so they can use him as a proxy when they invade when Varys' Golden Company invades Westeros, and to smooth over that later invasion. And Rorist also gives some other variants on, these are in her video, of maybe without Varys, Tyrek fled to the Free Cities, but then, I didn't understand what she was saying, grew despondent about being everyone's puppet or something, so he voluntarily committed suicide. I don't understand that. But the key point was, that guy has curly hair and is young. Guys, we have to stop making theories based on wordplay or assuming that vaguely similar looking people are actually previously established characters in disguise. There are thousands of characters in these novels, and George R. R. Martin inevitably reuses a few basic physical descriptions like young with curly hair. When has wordplay and vague physical resemblance ever been a solid indicator of George R. R. Martin's intentions? Except for the Gravedigger. And for Alrus at the Citadel. And the jailer who turned out to be Varys. But in this case, moreover, at the end of her video, Rorist acknowledged that some also theorize it was Littlefinger who orchestrated the riot and kidnapped Tyrek, but she simply says, just, Littlefinger is a big stretch. Without even specifying, why do you think that? Give some counter reasons. So I was very confused by that she didn't really list off, this is why it wouldn't be Littlefinger. Well, why is it a stretch? It felt cut off. So I'm not trying to make an entertaining theory. I'm trying to go, Martin is trying to write this as realistically what would happen, even though these are fictional characters. What is realistically what all these players in the game would be trying to do? And the motto I'm trying to follow on this is an old motto of investigative police work, cui bono, which is Latin for to whose benefit. You follow, well, who benefits from this logically? Now, you see, I do a lot of wiki work for the TV show wiki and also the book wiki, so I'm used to, when I do research, I don't reread chapters so much as I reread articles and then reread chapters for evidence that I perceive the Riot of King's Landing not as a book chapter told from Tyrion's perspective, but as a persistent event in this persistent fictional world. So, like, the Battle of the Blackwater, for example, isn't just a Sansa perspective chapter. It's told from overlapping perspectives from Sansa, from Tyrion. So it's not just the chapter that it happened in, but that, like, 2 books later, a character will make a stray mention about, oh yeah, that other thing happened because of the riot. Which I'm not reading through careful turns of phrase that during the Tyrion chapter itself I mentioned, and there's Tyrek with his curly hair. I look at events as they are in, like, an encyclopedia entry, like Wikipedia. So I'm looking at the Riot of King's Landing page, and it lists who was involved, strength, commanders, losses, and it lists these are the people who died. So, okay, this is the event, and there's a list of results. And I look at those results and go, who benefits from that? As the actual wording doesn't specifically matter, unless it's like a very subtle clue, but like Preston Greenfield died, or Preston Greenfield was killed. It doesn't matter specifically how that's phrased, except when it does, when it's a hint. But I perceive this as, okay, it's an event, and there's a list of what happened. 6 things happened in the Riot of King's Landing. And the question is to find out who would benefit from all this, and was it necessarily the same person? That's a good question. But first, Tyrek Lannister disappeared. No corpse, no ransom. 2, the High Septon was torn limb from limb. 3, Aron Santagar was killed. 4, the Kingsguard Preston Greenfield was killed. 5, Lawless Stokeworth was gang raped. And 6, public opinion sours on Joffrey and the Lannisters. Now, in the books, the Crown's debt was $3 million to Tywin Lannister and another $2 million to the Iron Bank, but also $1 million to the Faith of the Seven. They were involved in the debt crisis storyline a little too. And Littlefinger had been complaining that the old High Septon wasn't willing to negotiate the Crown's debt. His death paved the way for the Lannisters to install a more pliable puppet. He was leaning towards Lannister sympathies, the original one, but even he was like, look, I'm not going to forgive you 1 million gold dragons in debt. The next one would be a lot more amenable to that, or at least not calling in the debt. They said he was Tyrion's trained seal, the second one. So, killing the High Septon, who they stated was dragging his feet on the debt crisis, and replacing with a puppet would also further Littlefinger's own schemes of using all the money he embezzled to bribe off the Vale Lords. Who is involved in the manipulating the financial aspect of the war storyline, like the Iron Bank, Tywin, Littlefinger, High Septon. Like, Varys wasn't really in that part of the storyline that much, but Littlefinger was, and the old High Septon was one of his main rivals. Now, this is... Even like Jaime figured this out, you don't start a large-scale riot consuming all of the Slum District Flea Bottom just to grab one Lannister boy. You do it to create a cover story. Simply kidnapping Tyrek from his bed would raise suspicions. And similarly, poisoning the fat High Septon in his morning lamprey pie would be easy, but raise suspicions. What if the High Septon's death wasn't random? Like, even Jaime in the part I read already, he never paused to consider that. Next point, Aron Santagar was also killed, and he was the Master-at-Arms of the Red Keep, and he's also Dornish, it's the Dornish house. And pretty much the only thing he did in the narrative before he died was in Book 1, Catelyn Stark had shown him the Valyrian steel dagger when she was asking around about who owned it, and it turned out Littlefinger lied to her that no, well, Tyrion, he was framing Tyrion for it. So... Littlefinger may have had him killed as an added bonus during the riot to tie up loose ends. I think he caused the riot to kill High Septon, raise fears among the Lannister enemies, but while he was at it, he crossed off some rivals. That he was to tie up some loose ends because Sir Aron could have plausibly incriminated him. Outright confirmed that Littlefinger tried to frame Tyrion. Tyrion is... well aware that Littlefinger framed him, and it's this simmering background rivalry that even when they're pleasant at the council, he knows that I know that he knows that he tried to frame me. And it's at this point my word against his, but once Tyrion figures out, oh, I can get Aron Santagar to tell Tywin, confirm him, yes, Littlefinger tried to frame your son, that he would go after Littlefinger. And Varys has nothing to do with this character. Pretty much his only action in the narrative was with the Valyrian steel dagger. And this is the specific thing that, when I was looking through the list, set me off on, I don't think this was Varys. I think this was Littlefinger. Because Aron Santagar is, you could only describe him as, well, he's an enemy of Littlefinger. He could finger him for the dagger. And all this other stuff didn't occur. I read all this other parts of it on Reddit and on message boards that other people better than me have put together the why it's actually Littlefinger theory. I independently came to it by, when I stumbled on, Santagar is more someone Littlefinger would want to kill. But as for the other points, remember, the next few are all interrelated. Renly had just died, and Littlefinger had just been sent away from King's Landing to Highgarden explicitly to win over the Tyrells to the Lannister side. The Tyrells wanted Margaery to be queen, and the people to love her more than Cersei or Joffrey, laying groundwork to kill him, and also want Loras to be a Kingsguard, because he's a third son in the books. So it benefits Littlefinger to provoke Joffrey into publicly doing something really stupid and provocative, which is easy. Throw a cow pie at Joffrey's head. You can predict he probably won't react with quiet dignity and grace. And this softens up the populace to welcome Margaery as their savior. Tyrion notes people are cheering the Tyrells for food aid now, even though they caused the blockade. That there was a food shortage in King's Landing because the Tyrells closed down food shipments on the Rose Road from the Reach to King's Landing. And everyone's, hooray, hooray, the Tyrells brought food. They're the ones that brought it back, they're the ones that took it away. Now, also, the Tyrells want to ensure Margaery's safety by having Loras appointed to Joffrey's Kingsguard. This is also an honor for Loras in its own right. Now, the TV show screwed all this up and cut out some things. There are two older Tyrell brothers. Tywin can't appoint Loras to the Kingsguard against his will, and so forth. Problem is, Kingsguards serve for life, and there are only 7, and new openings don't just pop up very often. This is the big info dump which was necessary at the end of the 3rd book, where Littlefinger explains that all of his plans were leading to Joffrey's death. Pay attention to the wording here. When I came to Highgarden, he left right before the riot. When I came to Highgarden to dicker for Margaery's hand, she let her lord... Olenna, let her lord's son bluster while she asked pointed questions about Joffrey's nature. I praised him to the skies, to be sure, whilst my men spread disturbing tales amongst Lord Tyrell's servants. That is how the game is played. I also planted the notion of Sir Loras taking the white. Not that I suggested it, myself, that it would have been too crude, and this is the key sentence. But men in my party supplied grisly tales about how the mob had killed Sir Preston Greenfield and raped the Lady Lawless, and then slipped a few silvers to Lord Tyrell's singers and harpers to sing about great Kingsguard of the past, like Ryan Redwine, Serwyn of the Mirror Shield, Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight. A harp can be as dangerous as a sword in the right hands. Mace Tyrell actually thought it was his own idea to make Sir Loras's inclusion in the Kingsguard part of the marriage contract. Who better to protect his daughter than her splendid knightly brother? And it relieved him of the difficult task of trying to find lands and a bride for a 3rd son. Never easy, and doubly difficult in Sir Loras's case. Be that as it may, Lady Olenna was not about to let Joff harm her precious darling granddaughter, but unlike her son, she also realized that under all his flowers and finery, Sir Loras is as hot-tempered as Jaime Lannister. He's young, he's in love. When Renly died, he killed 2 other men in a fit of rage who had failed to guard Renly. Toss Joffrey, Margaery, and Loras in a pot, and you've got the makings for Kingslayer stew. The old woman understood something else as well. Her son was determined to make Margaery a queen, and for that he needed a king, but he did not need Joffrey. We shall have another wedding soon, wait and see. Margaery will marry Tommen. Okay, how could Littlefinger's men spread lurid details about the riot in King's Landing when Littlefinger's party left for Highgarden before the riot? And yeah, he could have gotten letters, he could have had messengers who came late and followed the main party from King's Landing to where he already was in Highgarden, but the way he says it implies he meant they saw it firsthand. It's the phrasing he uses. And, the Riot is told from Tyrion's point of view, and while Littlefinger had left for Highgarden, there's a point where Tyrion wonders why he hasn't received messages about his arrival yet, that it's taking Littlefinger curiously long to get from one side of Westeros to the other. It's taken too long to get from King's Landing to Highgarden, even in wartime. And but then the Riot happens, so he forgets about it. And Littlefinger also explicitly points out in this speech that the death of Sir Preston and the rape of Lawless Stokeworth specifically played to his benefit. It helped convince Mace to make Loras a Kingsguard, and which in turn would fuel the Lannister-Tyrell rivalry, and even encourage Olenna to want to kill Joffrey. If Marjorie's just another prisoner at the royal court like Sansa was, he wants to keep his enemies divided, and that would be the Lannisters relatively strong. He wants to fuel a Tyrell-Lannister rivalry to weaken both of them, but playing to the Tyrells for the moment to weaken the Lannisters. So he would want some of the Kingsguard to be the Tyrells. He wants Loras on the Kingsguard so they can't just threaten Marjorie anymore, and possibly even threaten Joffrey himself. So that was all the divide and conquer that made sense. Now, Littlefinger already had an agent in the Kingsguard, Mandon Moore, who tried to kill Tyrion and slashed his face. He aimed too high because he's a dwarf, and before he could get him, Pod pushed him over and killed him. The TV show played this up for cheap tension and alluded it was Joffrey who ordered Mandon to kill him, but then just forgot about it in Season 3. Now, in the books, nobody knows who Mandon is loyal to, but it was actually Jon Arryn who insisted that King Robert make him a Kingsguard. But it's also said that Lord Aron didn't even like Mandon, but had made him a Kingsguard at request of his wife Lysa. Hint, hint, Littlefinger wanted him. Littlefinger wanted him to be a Kingsguard, so he had Lysa pressure Jon Arryn to pressure Robert to appoint him to the Kingsguard. So if Littlefinger wanted to win favor with his new Tyrell allies, while at the same time manipulating a Tyrell-Lannister rivalry by having Loras made a Kingsguard, he needed to clear a spot. And who were the 7 Kingsguard at the time? Well, 3 of them he either wouldn't or couldn't remove. Jaime Lannister was captured and by the Starks, too hard to get to. Aerys Oakheart, well, he had just left with Myrcella to Dorne. He was on the ship with her. And Mandon Moore probably works for Littlefinger, and during the Riot he ran away quickly with Joffrey. So if you're going to kill 1 or more Kingsguard to open up a spot for Loras, there's 4 candidates. Meryn Trant, Boris Blount, Preston Greenfield, and Sandor Clegane. Of these, Meryn and Boros just cowardly ran with Cersei immediately back to the Red Keep and didn't even try to make a stand against the rioters, much less give them a chance to kill them. And they're mounted in the book version. They're on horses. And Preston Greenfield, in contrast, he didn't just turn tail and run back to the Red Keep with Cersei. He was with someone else. He tried to go back to save the High Septon, but then they both got killed. So he got pulled from his horse and his skull caved in with a rock. Sandor Clegane, it's possible that whoever orchestrated the riot, possibly Littlefinger, also gave orders to kill the Hound and just failed. Because he's the Hound. He's over 6 feet tall. He was on foot. He had dismounted to try and Joffrey ordered him to get who threw the cow pie, and he carved a path through the rioters to save Sansa. So maybe they tried and failed to kill him, and Preston was unlucky. But of who you're going to try to kill, these are the one. That's why it was Preston and not Mandon. Problem was, without Littlefinger around, Cersei immediately chose to replace Preston Greenfield with Balon Swan, a fairly honorable man, and a choice Tyrion also approved of. So what might have thrown us off the scent was that Loras directly replaced Mandon Moore when he died soon after that. Now, what I think happened, he wanted to open a place on the Kingsguard, get Sir Preston killed, but then some other replacement happens. He didn't control that. I think it's possible. I'm pretty sure that Littlefinger sent Mandon Moore to kill Tyrion. He was obviously his agent. He's the one who got him hired. I think it's possible that when Littlefinger sent Mandon to kill Tyrion, it was as a win-win situation where either way it's to his benefit. Either A, Mandan kills Tyrion and Littlefinger removes a direct rival. Tyrion realized he had framed him. He was not playing around with him. He knew Littlefinger was dangerous and was on his intellectual level. Either A, Mandan succeeds in killing Tyrion and he removes a rival, or B, Tyrion's men somehow in the heat of battle, because he's surrounded by loyal soldiers, even in that chaos, that Tyrion's men manage to stop and kill Mandan before he can kill Tyrion, which is what happened, in which case Littlefinger also wins. It opens a spot on the Kingsguard that he wanted to put Loras in. Either scenario, he wins in the end, just in different ways. Now, the next point that happened, I always thought this was just random, and looking through the benefit analysis, I realized, and looking through his words, Loras Stokeworth was gang-raped by the mob. This was cut from the TV show because they didn't even include her as a character, too many subplots, I don't blame her for that, but in the book, she's gang-raped by the mob and even got pregnant from it, and eventually was married off to Bronn as a minor bribe. Well, what is Littlefinger's relationship with the Stokeworths? Would he have anything to benefit from her being raped? Well, actually, yeah. In the first novel, Littlefinger mentions that Lawless's mother Tanda keeps hosting dinners for Littlefinger in hopes that he'll marry Lawless, but Littlefinger tells Ned in private he'd rather marry the roast pig. Lawless is fat, considered dull-witted, and she's second in line to House Stokeworth. And so it's this annoying marriage proposal that her mother keeps presenting him with, and he wants to go away. Now, ordering the mob to gang-rape Lawless would mean Littlefinger had an excuse to openly refuse her mother's constant marriage proposals and make them stop, which Littlefinger found to be annoying. Keep in mind, this is Book Littlefinger. This is the same man who had Jane Poole imprisoned and sexually enslaved in one of his brothels for several years. An 11-year-old girl. My mind keeps boggling at that. At the time, he didn't know they'd need a fake Arya. A replacement Arya that, like in Book 1, why would you send her to a brothel to be sexually enslaved? Is it like just swatting a fly to him? It wasn't just for a use, it doesn't seem. I don't know, that's a whole separate issue, but he is petty and cruel and will destroy people for minor insults just because he can. And he doesn't have people feelings. So if you're shocked by that, is it beyond Book Littlefinger, who did that to Jane Poole, to go, oh, I'm annoyed by these constant marriage proposals from the Stokeworths. While we're at it, while we're having the riot, someone rape Lawless so I don't have to keep getting marriage proposals from her. Yeah, that seems like something Littlefinger would do. That's within his pattern, or at least it's not out of his character. Like Stannis wouldn't do that, Littlefinger would. But more specific, not just that a minor annoyance was an added benefit, more specifically, as Littlefinger himself said, it was to his advantage to have a lurid story of rape for the Tyrells to convince them to make Loras a Kingsguard to keep Marjorie safe. So, okay, it's to his benefit to have a noblewoman raped during a riot who is in the king's party. That narrows the choice to a dozen or two noblewomen, and, well, pick the one that's most annoying to him that he wants to go away and have an excuse not to marry. To whose benefit was all this? Looking at the chart again, 6 points, to whose benefit were all these? Well, the other 5 points, High Septon killed, Aron Santagar, Preston Greenfield killed, Lawless gang raped, and public opinion sours on Joffrey and the Lannisters. Littlefinger benefited from all of these things. Did Varys? How would Varys benefit from the deaths of Aron Santagar or Preston Greenfield? I mean, a shake-up in the Kingsguard in Book 2, that's nothing to Varys. When the invasion he wants to aid happens, that's going to be in Book 6. So that had no bearing on it. Aron Santagar and Preston Greenfield dying did not benefit him in any way, while it helped Littlefinger with the Valyrian Steel Dagger plot and with helping his new Tyrell allies put Loras on the Kingsguard. Lawless's rape. Varys wouldn't benefit from that in any way, where, yeah, there is something connecting that to Littlefinger. Or from a new, strong Lannister-Tyrell alliance defeating the Baratheons and then the Starks. The Riot cemented the alliance by making the commoners love the Tyrells more as their saviors, and Littlefinger just secretly allied the Tyrells to kill Joffrey. So The only result of the riot that Varys could plausibly benefit from is kidnapping Tyrek Lannister himself, not any of the other things that also happened in it. And Jaime suspects that, like Lancel, Tyrek would know various secrets about King Robert and or Cersei, and also thinks it suspicious that Varys was mysteriously not with the royal party at the docks that day. A man with his vast spy network should have known if there would be a riot and may have outright caused it. Well, those are the reasons that Jaime thinks of, that, well, he must have secrets about King Robert from being his squire, but apart from his lineage as just he's a Lannister, but from his position as Robert's squire, think about it. After all this time, long past Book 2, but now going on to Book 6, after this entire war, what valuable secrets could Tyrek possibly even possess anymore? The only plausible one to me is further proof that Cersei actually killed Robert by having Lancel spike his wine during the boar hunt. And, okay, that's the one plausible secret he might still have. Who cares about that? Varys' foreign invasion? Well, no. Or Littlefinger manipulating the faith of the Seven directly into turning against Cersei and deposing her, possibly with the Tyrells. That's much more of a clear and present danger and use for his knowledge about Cersei killing Robert. Now, Jaime has his own in-universe suspicions because he doesn't know what's coming, but out of universe, we know that having a minor Lannister cousin like Tyrek prisoner, he could be used as a puppet ruler for the Westerlands after someone wipes out the other Lannisters. And yes, both Littlefinger and Varys would want this. But that applies equally to both, while not really ruling out the other points for Littlefinger and against Varys. Plus, Varys sort of respects Tyrion. I mean, he could use him as a direct wedge against Tywin and the others. He knows that they're not on good terms. He doesn't need to kidnap a minor cousin to be a puppet. And indeed, Tyrion eventually falls in with the Varys Illyrio Targaryen crowd. By the time Tyrion fled to Pentos, if Varys had taken Tyrek prisoner, wouldn't he have told Tyrion about it? And there's ways he might not have, but, he didn't want to know he was tortured. But there's so many other reasons why it was probably Littlefinger. So the conclusion is, there is no doubt in my mind that Littlefinger orchestrated the riot of King's Landing. This soured people on Joffrey and freed up a position on the Kingsguard. It also removed the High Septon, who was a rival on Crown Debt. Loras being raped made the Tyrells want Loras to be Kingsguard even more, while removing an annoyance, and while he was at it, got rid of Aron Santagar, a loose end from the Valyrian steel dagger ploy. However, Jaime was right about one thing. I want to give credit to Roris that this isn't just me yelling. I'm not yelling in any of it. That through dialectic inquiry, this is refining our understanding. I used to take it as a given that, well, Littlefinger benefited from one thing during the riot, killing Aron Santagar. Therefore, all 6 points must have been directly related to him. Well, maybe there was more than one agenda going on at the time. And watching her video made me reconsider this, that there's no doubt in my mind that Littlefinger benefited from points 2 through 6 on the list I made, and he made the riot. But Jaime was right about one thing. A man like Varys, with his spy network, should have known a riot was going to happen. And not just a random riot, but particularly he would have known if Littlefinger's agents were actively encouraging a large-scale riot. There's no way his spy network wouldn't pick up on Littlefinger's agents doing that, no matter how secretive. So he must have known, but did nothing to stop it. And case in point, even Jaime points out he knew to avoid showing up at the docks that day. He knew a riot was going to happen. So why didn't he do anything? Well, remember, Littlefinger and Varys want neither the Lannisters nor the Starks and Baratheons to win. They're trying to play them off against each other to drag out the war and weaken all of their rivals for a later attack. Varys is destabilizing them to prepare for a foreign invasion. Littlefinger is destabilizing for an internal seizure of power or attack by the Vale under him, but it's as soon as the Lannisters start winning, they start turning on him. As soon as the Starks start winning, they'll edge him out. So they're helpful, like in books 2 and 3. They're helpful enough to the Lannisters to keep them in the fight, but never enough to let them win, because they want to bleed everyone through attrition. So it simply wasn't to Varys' benefit to stop the riot from happening. Why would he stop it if he knew about it? The riot made Joffrey and the Lannisters' hold on power weaker. Why help them by preventing it? So while I'm certain that Littlefinger engineered the riot, it is equally possible that Varys, who was certainly aware of it in advance, there's no doubt he was aware of it, it is equally possible that he seized on the opportunity of the riot to have his spies grab Tyrek in the confusion. Both Varys and Littlefinger do need a Lannister puppet. So I personally still think it's not Varys, but Littlefinger. But that's just on a personal level. I don't think there were two agendas going on. But even then, I'm starting to have self-doubt, because Roris made a strong argument for, well, yeah, Varys would have known he would also benefit from Tyrek. It's equally possible Varys grabbed him. Varys was more willing to work with Tyrion against Tywin. Why use a minor cousin as a puppet when you have a relationship with Tywin's own son and legal heir? Why not tell him when he's in the Free Cities? There was no reason not to reveal it by that point. That's my big strike against it being Varys, of why wouldn't he have told Tyrion then? But in all fairness, there's all this other crazy stuff. I was thinking maybe it was Doran Martell because he wanted to destabilize them. But there's so many other strikes against that. Why would he kill Aron Santagar, one of his own Dornish? Lawless's rape. Really, only Littlefinger benefited from that because it helped the Tyrell alliance. So, in reaction to that other video, I'm pretty sure Littlefinger grabbed him, but to what specific purpose? I only have vague suspicions. That how is he going to play into all of this? We don't know. George R. R. Martin has been asked and has stated, just vaguely, yes, I will explain what happened to Tyrek before the novel series ends. It's not meant to be this open-ended mystery, that the answer is meant to come eventually. That there is a planned revelation of what the heck happened to Tyrek. So, that's my views on that. And I keep wondering, with the rest of you, how exactly is their game going to play out in the next book, Varys and Littlefinger, because it's only just begun.